Hello, people. Tiberius. Started this at the cabin and finished it when I got home. Uh, 221 pages. The author's name is Gregorio Maranon. And it was such a weird little book that I even Googled the guy to see what he was all about. He's a fairly accomplished guy. There's a hospital named after him. But he's not a great author. Here I'm on page 23, and this is like the third religious outburst that this author has had when, a Christian outburst, when really Tiberius had nothing to do with Christianity. He makes the claim several times in the book that Tiberius heard all about Jesus being crucified and heard all about Jesus being resurrected, and it made Tiberius consider becoming a Christian. I'd never read any of that anywhere else. I think he was just making all that up. Just, he says here, in other words, his life was divided into two of the most memorable happening in human history, the space of time intervening between the birth and the death of Christ. That's not the most memorable event in human history. It's very untypical for a history author. Very untypical. Most authors of history tend to kind of downplay, for one, because they realize that it's kind of like the flavor of the month. They go into Julia. Julia is Tiberius's first wife, and she just turns into a complete slut. It's also Augustus' daughter, I believe, if I remember correctly. They talk about dwarves a little bit, and I'll read the part about the dwarves in just a second here, but at work we try to make nicknames for everybody. And there's a real short guy, and I Googled famous dwarves of history, and we call the guy Tattoo now. But one of the dwarves in history, I can't remember what his name was or what royal court it was. It was in England. People would have a dwarf for a son or a daughter, and they're like, cha-ching, because, palace retinues, they wanted to have a dwarf there. They thought it was funny and cool, and so these people in England, they had this dwarf, and they offered him up to sale. And, of course, the royal, the palace people fell in love with this dwarf. And when they brought him in to present him to the king or the queen or whatever it was, they didn't bake him in there because it would have killed him, but they brought him in a big pie crust. That's how they introduced him. But that's a whole nother story. So, historians of the period say that Julia was very beautiful, and that she possessed all the other graces in addition to perfection of feature. Her mode of living was sumptuous. Her luxury and extravagance knew no bounds. One of her fads was dwarves, who even at this time served as an inhumane amusement for the mighty. Her daughter, Julia II, so like her mother, copied her in this and in worse things, and went everywhere with a little monstrosity in whom she delighted, to the great annoyance of Augustus, who hated deformity. I'm sure he wasn't a monstrosity just because he was a dwarf. Yeah, just, here he goes again about Augustus, or not Augustus, but about Tiberius, wanting to know what happened, wanting to know more about Jesus. And I don't think that's true at all. The Romans didn't give any fucks about what happened in Judea, and Pilate really just kind of disappears from history. Nobody knows what happened to Pilate after that. There's a little bit of evidence that Pilate got reassigned to somewhere in Gaul. I had read before that they found a style or a stele. I don't know how to pronounce that. It's like a column where people would carve stuff in there, and it had Pilate's name on it. So he may have gone there and finished up his career. I got it again here. Author is making shit up. Okay, second paragraph. Yeah, this is just an example of some of the weird stuff that this guy wrote. The book was written in 1939, so I guess I should cut him a little break, because there was a lot of weird stuff going around, pseudo-scientific stuff at the time. But all through the book, he offers his psychological breakdown of Tiberius, Augustus, Julia, Livia, all these people. And so here he gives us his marriage advice. This is the author. But almost always when a married couple get on so well, it is because one of them commands and the other obeys. There never has been found, and there never will be found, any other formula for human beings living together in peace. From the initial social nucleus, which is the bridal bed, to the nation, which is the sum of many homes, and the world, which embraces all the nations. What matters is that the inevitable yoke should be imposed by the one who commands without arrogance, and accepted by the one who obeys without humiliation. This is some of this guy's philosophy, which I found crazy. Okay, it's a 221-page book, and on page 165, this is how he starts it out. It is now time for me to speak directly about Tiberius. Hitherto I have sketched his figure from the outside, from the standpoint of the men, the women, and the passions surrounding him. I must now complete this profile and compare it with the findings of a direct study of his personality. And it's true. The book could have just as easily been called, instead of calling it Tiberius, call it The People Around Tiberius. Because, 2/3 of the book didn't have much to do with Tiberius. And I really bought this because at one time I thought, I'm gonna get all the Roman emperors. Not all of them, the year of the 4 emperors. I'm sure I won't get Otho, but I'm going to get most of them. And I have jumped ahead, and I got Hadrian is awful interesting. There was a guy, Maximus Thrax. I got a book about him. He was very interesting. But, yeah, he finally does get to Tiberius. But I don't know anything about... The book didn't tell me anything about Tiberius's campaigns. Did the Roman Empire shrink? Did it expand? Was he on the defensive? Or I don't know what he did. I don't know what his imperial edicts were. I don't know what, they're always talking about the people of Rome and the corn laws and all that stuff. And none of that was in here. So it's kind of a shitty book. I will put it on the rack. I didn't work today, so I read 125 pages in another book, and I'm sure I'll be done with that in a couple of days. Thanks for watching.